So I welcome you all after the Dr. Parmeet Singh lecture. Now we have a resource person, Mushtaq Abbas Jakir Sahab. He is a member of the United Kingdom Accreditation Service, and he is having a vast experience of food safeties, and he is a certified lead auditor under International Register of Certified Auditors. Now he is posting in Kashmir. So I request Mr. Mushtaq Abbas Jakir Sahab, please come on the dais and start his lecture.
Thank you very much, sir, and a very good afternoon to all of you. Before I start, I want to see who are the participants and what faculty they belong to. May I have some introduction from your side? Quick, without standing, no need to stand. Student. Okay, how many of you are students? Almost everybody. Okay. Okay. So, sir has already introduced me. I'm working as a food safety officer, and today we are going to touch some main issues regarding food safety and ISO 22000-2005 in with regards to HACCP. Before we start, I just want to know from you, what is food? Let us make it interactive, because I'm not a bookish kind of a person. Let's make it interactive so that everybody gets engaged in my lecture and I feel that something is being absorbed by you. Can anybody define me food? Anything? For good health, as long as its intended use is taken by our body. For example, we are in a travel and we travel for about 1 day without eating anything. We are fatigued, we are starved, and at the same time, in the evening, we reach our home. We feel very hungry, tired, exhausted, and want something to eat. And at the same time, when we reach our home, we couldn't find anything prepared, maybe because of some engagement, and we went out to the street food and ate something to our fill. It so happened that after an hour or 2 hours, we felt ill. It can be like that. There are so many instances wherein we face such situations. In that case, what do we say? Will that be whatever we took, जो भी हमने खाया, हम बीमार हो गए, लेकिन जो कुछ भी हमने खाया, क्या उसे हम फूड मानेंगे? हमारी भूख तो मिट गई, हमने खाना भी खाया, लेकिन फूड सेफ्टी के हिसाब से क्या वो फूड कंसिडर माना जाएगा? नो, बिकॉज इंटेंडेड यूज वॉज नॉट सर्व. हम कितनी ही अच्छी नियामत क्यों न खाए, कितना ही अच्छा फूड क्यों न खाए, कितना ही अच्छी चीज क्यों न खाए, लेकिन अगर हमारा इंटेंडेड यूज नहीं हुआ उसका, तो उसे फूड एज पर द फूड सेफ्टी डेफिनेशन फूड नहीं माना जाए. और दूसरी क्वालिटी जो है food key, as per the food safety definitions, it should be wholesome. It should be wholesome, means inclusive of everything. So I'll start my presentation. I think the turn around doesn't look good. Next slide, please. Next. Introduction. The Government of India by notification established an autonomous body, namely Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, to oversee implementation of Food Safety and Standards Act. It was in 2006 and its rules were formulated in 2011. Food Safety Standards Authority of India will use its acronym as FSSAI, is responsible for protecting and promoting public health and regulations and supervision of food safety. So everything what is being done in the field of food safety is regulated by Food Safety Standards Authority of India. Next slide. Before we move further, it is very important to say that before the commencement of this Act, Food Safety and Standards Act, there were so many acts in existence which were regulating different food articles. One was Prevention of Food Adulteration Act 1954. It was the main act which addressed this adulteration of food. Then there was Food Products Order 1955, Meat and Meat Products Order 1973, Vegetable Oil Products Control Order 1947, and blah blah. There were so many things. But because of so many acts, there was a kind of chaos in the market. I would go to a person and I'll say, मुझे जरा आप अपनी लाइसेंस दिखाओ. वो आपने दिखाता था फूड प्रिवेंशन ऑफ फूड अल्टरनेटिव की लाइसेंस. फिर कोई और आता था, हमारी लाइसेंस दिखाओ, मीट एंड मीट प्रोडक्ट्स की लाइसेंस दिखाओ, या फूड प्रोडक्ट्स ऑर्डर की लाइसेंस दिखाओ. तो सो इट वाज अ मल्टी लेवल, मल्टी कंट्रोल. इसमें अकाउंटेबिलिटी किसी एक की नहीं थी. वो भी इंप्लीमेंट करता था, ये भी इंप्लीमेंट करता था, ये भी इंप्लीमेंट करता था. एज अ रिजल्ट जो फूड बिजनेस ऑपरेटर जिसको हम कहते हैं, दुकानदार या मैन्युफैक्चरर या कोई भी, वो परेशान हो जा रहा था कि मैं किसको फॉलो करूं. उसकी डायरेक्शन एक थी, मेरी डायरेक्शन एक थी, इनकी डायरेक्शन एक थी. तो इट वाज अ काइंड ऑफ अ मेसी सिचुएशन. To overcome this, what happened when this Food Safety and Standards Act 2006 was introduced? These acts were repealed. So, since the commencement of this Act 2000, this Food Safety and Standards Act in 2006, all these acts were revoked. So, everything in the field of food safety will be done as per the Food Safety and Standards Act. Next slide. Next. Excuse me. Next slide. The structural organization of Food Safety Standards Authority of India. It is headed by Food Authority. So there are different wings. Central Advisory Committee is there, state level streaming committees there, district level advisory committees there, and there are scientific panels and different stakeholders who report to Food Authority while framing the Act. Next slide. this Food Safety and Standards Act, what was the need? The question is, what was, if there were so many acts operating in existence? One factor was that it was a multi-pronged approach. It was a messy kind of situation. There was anybody would from different sources would come and ask food business operators about their regulations. So what happened was that the food business operator eventually got confused and you would say, hey, मुझे किसको आप बताना है, मुझे एक पर्सन दे दो. तो इस प्रॉब्लम को दूर करने के लिए फूड सेफ्टी स्टैंडर्ड्स एक्ट आ गया. लेकिन ये फूड सेफ्टी स्टैंडर्ड्स एक्ट जो इन्होंने लाया, जो कमेंस हुआ, इसका सबसे बेस्ट पार्ट ये था कि ये इन लाइन विद द मॉडर्न कंसेप्ट्स था. ये जो एक्ट है ये इन लाइन विद द मॉडर्न कंसेप्ट्स है और इन लाइन विद द इंटरनेशनल रेगुलेटरी सिस्टम है. So the important thing about this act, you should all know, the food safety which has commenced from 2006 is number one in line with the international acts which is being implemented by so many countries, and second thing, it is as per the scientific approach. So various standards for the food items have been assigned as per the various scientific approaches. In the previous slide mentioned that there were so many scientific panels advising this. So since the commencement of this act, the important thing about this act is that it is in line with the Food Safety Management System, FSMS. Does anybody know what FSMS means? Food Safety Management System, yes, it is there. Food Safety Management System is there. It is there, but the important thing about Food Safety Management System is that it is risk-based. It manages risk. It maintains food safety to be risk-free affair. And there are a set of rules that are in line with Food Safety Management System which food business operators have to adhere to in order to become a successful food business operator and to keep the food safe from all the risks. So, to ensure the delegates here is meant by food business operators, are able to identify and understand the risk associated with the foods, and number two, manage the risk so that the business benefits out of food safety management system plan, which includes risk management and its reduction. So food, as you know, we all know, it is prone to risks. If it's not prepared in a healthy way, if it is contaminated by microorganisms, if it is not prepared in hygienic way, it can lead to so many risks. So to identify those risks and to manage them in a better way is what Food Safety Management System does. Next slide, please. There are some historical aspects in this. The delegates are able to describe and understand the main historical developments in the food safety concept. ये भी अपना रिकॉर्ड रखते हैं, तो फूड सेफ्टी मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम के हिसाब से इनको ये पता चलता है अपने हिस्ट्री में, अपने रिकॉर्ड्स देख के कि कब हमारी फूड में प्रॉब्लम होगी, उसका कॉज क्या था और उसका एक्शन क्या लिया था उस टाइम. फॉर एग्जांपल, अगर कोई फैक्टर रेकरेंट हो गया आफ्टर 4 साल 5 साल के बाद रिस्क आ गया इनके, तो अगर ये अपना रिकॉर्ड्स देखेगा, अपनी हिस्ट्री देख के, तो उसमें इसको पता चल जाए कि वो किस वजह से हुआ था, एंड ही कैन टेक प्रिवेंटिव मेजर्स और करेक्टिव मेजर्स अकॉर्डिंगली. दिस इज द एस्पेक्ट, दिस इज वन ऑफ द एस्पेक्ट्स ऑफ फूड सेफ्टी मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम. नेक्स्ट स्लाइड. Then there is a concept of HACCP. Since you are all related to food science, so you must be knowing what HACCP means. Is it like that? You know? Okay. HACCP, basically it was designed for the foods to be served to astronauts. हम अगर यहाँ पर कुछ खाना खाएंगे, बीमार हो जाएंगे, हम डॉक्टर के पास जाएंगे, दवाई लेंगे, ठीक हो जाएंगे, लेकिन एस्ट्रोनॉट जो स्पेस में होगा, अगर वो फूड खाने की वजह से बीमार हो गया, he cannot go to a doctor, he cannot ask for the medicines, and there are so many other things. So to eliminate these risks, foodborne risks altogether, this HACCP was devised. It was devised in 1960 in collaboration with Pillsbury Company and National Aeronautics and Space Administration (NASA), and the US Army laboratories were also involved in this. Next. Now, after this HACCP, there were so many countries which came together and formed laws related to food safety. These laws are known as Codex Alimentarius. Its foundation was laid in 1961. The Codex Alimentarius Commission is an international body with 158 member countries. It's a Latin word, comprises standard systems of practices and recommendations that ensure that the products are not bad for the human health. Next slide, please. Now, HACCP history dates back to 1971. First presentation of the program of HACCP system, Conference of the Food Safety. In 1974, FDA, Food and Drug Administration, introduced the principle during the presentation of the requirements for the production of preserved food with low level of acidity. Why low level of acidity? Can anybody tell me? It was being done for the preservation of food with low level of acidity. Because low acidic foods means when a food tends to move towards the basic side, it becomes more prone to the microorganisms. Does anybody among you know what botulism means? Yes, Clostridium botulinum. It's a bacteria. It leads to a disease known as botulism, and particularly it develops in homemade foods, and particularly those foods which are slightly acidic or basic in nature. So the foods which are less acidic in nature are prone to more microbial growth. So HACCP was designed to take care of those foods also. Not only those but also. HACCP is based on, next slide please. HACCP is based on 7 principles. It has 7 principles. Next slide. First is hazard analysis and preventive measures. We have to analyze the hazards and take the preventive measures. Then we have to identify critical control points. We have to establish target levels for those critical limits. When we will elaborate those, I'll explain these points. Establish monitoring systems so that these things which are coming into our system do not come again. That's a monitoring. Establish corrective actions. Establish verification and establish documentation. Next. What was the purpose and benefits of this? It is applicable to the whole food chain. No food can be excluded from these principles, HACCP principles. It guarantees the production of safe food products, meeting the requirements of both customers and legal regulations. It should meet both the requirements, ultimately the consumers also and the legal parameters also. The adequate control of food safety related risks can be reduced or eliminated and cost related to. So what its benefits are for medical treatment. If a society is prone to the diseases, foodborne diseases, it takes care of those so that their medical bills are reduced. Absence of the work. If a person feels ill, he is not able to work. So it addresses that problem also. A person can attend his work more regularly. Insurance payments. If any bad happens because of the this harmful food we eat, since these are eliminated by HACCP, so our insurance payments are also reduced. And eventually with that legal compensation will also get reduced. If a manufacturer, is simple as anything. अगर मैन्युफैक्चरर कोई फूड अच्छे से बनाएगा, रिस्क फ्री फूड बनाएगा, तो ना तो कोई बीमार हो जाएगा उसकी वजह से, ना तो एब्सेंट फ्रॉम वर्क हो जाएगा, और उसको ना तो इंश्योरेंस की क्लेम करनी पड़ेगी और ना ही लीगल कंपनसेशन के लिए उसको सामना करना पड़ेगा. So these are all aspects it addresses. Next slide, please. Limitations in HACCP. लेकिन HACCP की जो है, HACCP इतना अच्छा सिस्टम होके भी उसमें थोड़ी बहुत लिमिटेशंस थी. जो दो मेन लिमिटेशंस थी वो ये थी. The verification process was not included in HACCP and thus audits could not be undertaken. ये एक ड्रॉबैक HACCP का ये था. इसमें डॉक्यूमेंटेशन इतनी ज्यादा नहीं था, वेरीफाइबल नहीं होता था. नो रिकॉर्ड कीपिंग वॉज प्लेस्ड इन HACCP. इसमें रिकॉर्ड्स चलो हो गया, इधर का हो गया, जो हो गया, लेकिन इसको रिकॉर्ड किस लिए रखना है, तो ये इसकी और एक. तो टू एड्रेस द अबव इश्यूज इट वॉज कॉर्पोरेटेड इन FSMS. तो ये डेफिसिट्स, इसके ड्रॉबैक्स रिमूव करने के लिए HACCP को फूड सेफ्टी मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम में ही इनकॉर्पोरेट किया गया. नेक्स्ट स्लाइड. ये फ्लो चार्ट है थोड़ा समझने के लिए. जो वहां एक्सट्रीम राइट से है, जब भी कोई रूल बनता है, रेगुलेशंस बनती है, देयर आर सो मेनी. जैसे मैंने बोला पहले, साइंटिफिक पैनल होता है, वो एडवाइजरी कमेटी बन जाता है फूड स्टैट्यूटरी या फूड अथॉरिटी के लिए. इसमें बहुत सारे स्टेक होल्डर्स होते हैं, जैसे प्रोड्यूसर्स ऑफ पेस्टिसाइड्स, फर्टिलाइजर्स एंड वेटरनरी ड्रग्स. ये इनका एक होता है. फूड चेन फॉर द प्रोडक्शन ऑफ इंग्रेडिएंट्स एंड एडिटिव्स, इनकी भी मेंबर्स होते हैं, इनकी भी रिप्रेजेंटेशन होती है. ट्रांसपोर्टेशन एंड स्टोरेज वालों की भी रिप्रेजेंटेशन होती है. प्रोड्यूसर ऑफ इक्विपमेंट्स, जो इक्विपमेंट्स बनाते हैं, इनकी भी रिप्रेजेंटेशन होती है. प्रोड्यूसर्स ऑफ क्लीनिंग एंड सैनिटाइजिंग एजेंट्स, इनकी भी. ये क्यों होता है, ये सब क्यों होता है, ये हम जब आगे बढ़ेंगे तब हमें पता चलेगा कि क्यों इनकी रिप्रेजेंटेशन जरूरी होती है. और अल्टीमेटली इनका गोल होता है जो नीचे कंज्यूमर्स है, इनके नीड्स को सेटिस्फाई करना. नेक्स्ट स्लाइड. Food safety management system, what does it comprise? It comprises GAPs, good agricultural practices, GVPs, good veterinary practices, good storage practices, good hygiene practices, good manufacturing practices, good distribution practices, good trading practices also. And इसके अपने स्टैंडर्ड ऑपरेटिंग प्रोसीजर्स होते हैं और सैनिटेशन स्टैंडर्ड ऑपरेटिंग प्रोसीजर्स होते हैं और CIPs होते हैं. एंड अल्टीमेटली फिर ऑडिट्स. नेक्स्ट स्लाइड. ऑडिट्स मेनली 3 टाइप्स के होते हैं. फर्स्ट पार्टी, सेकंड पार्टी एंड थर्ड पार्टी. जब कोई फूड बिजनेस ऑपरेटर अपने यूनिट को खुद ऑडिट करेगा, ये देखने के लिए कि कहीं मुझ में कोई कमजोरियां तो नहीं है, तो जो खुद ऑडिट करेगा उसको हम इंटरनल ऑडिट या फर्स्ट पार्टी ऑडिट कहते हैं. अब यही कंज्यूमर, जो ये फूड प्रोसेसर है, इसको रॉ मटेरियल या सप्लायर जो होता है उसका ऑडिट करेगा, ये देखने के लिए कि जो वो रॉ मटेरियल या प्राइमरी चीजें उसको प्रोसेसिंग के लिए देता है वो सही आ रही है कि नहीं. तो जब ये कंज्यूमर सप्लायर को ऑडिट करेगा, देन इट्स अ सेकंड पार्टी ऑडिट. एंड फाइनली द थर्ड पार्टी ऑडिट, when they feel no, maybe we are misled by our own audits. Let's make it more sure. तो ये किसी third party बाहर वाले बंदे को बुलाएगा, बोलेगा आप audit करो. तो that's called the third party audit. इसके अलावा दो और types के audit हैं. Next slide. Compliance और documentation review. ये खुद ही वो देखता है कि जो auditor मांग रहा है वो सारे documents उसके पास है कि नहीं, और conformance और implementation audit ये दोनों ये खुद ही करते हैं. So these are not valid audits, but these are complementary audits. Next slide. तो सबसे important इसमें जो issue है good agricultural practices, तो वो तो आप agriculture department वगैरह farmers को educate करता है. But what we are more concerned here is the processing of food. And while we are processing the food, we have to be very much particular about good hygiene practices. So what are the objectives? Next slide. All practices regarding the conditions and measures necessary to ensure the safety and stability of food on all stages of food chain. Raw material procure करते हैं, our hygienic practices start from there. We process it, we pack it, and we market it. They all have to be under good hygienic practices. Next slide. These should be in law with the general principles of hygiene codex. That is laws concerning to the country in which the food is prepared. Identify the essential principles of food hygiene throughout the food chain, achieve the goal to ensure that the food is safe and suitable for human consumption. Next slide. Hygiene में दो main process है, एक तो contamination है और एक cleaning है. Whatever we produce, it should not get contaminated. Simple. हम एक कोई end product बनाते हैं, end product तक ये पूरा ठीक रहा, लेकिन जब हमने end product तैयार किया, फिर हमने इसको exhibition के लिए रखा, display के लिए रखा, dust आ गया या environmental hazards आ गए, ये contaminate हो गए. So will it keep our practices safe? और it will destroy all our efforts. जितना भी processing हमने care किया, जितना भी raw material procuring में care किया, जितना भी preparation तक हमने care किया, अगर ये end में भी contaminate हो गया तो हमारा food unsafe हो गया. So right from procuring till processing and till sale, till it reaches to the consumer end user, तो हमें सारे sources of contamination इसमें eliminate करने. So contamination can cause unhygienic condition. And number two is cleaning. While we are cleaning the utensils, we have to use those things which do not stay away with the utensils. जैसे हमने डिटर्जेंट से इसको धोया, लेकिन हमने वो डिटर्जेंट यूज किया जो वॉश पूरी तरीके से नहीं होगा, तो ये हमारे फूड चेन में आ गया. So cleaning is the removal of soil, food residue, dirt, grease and other objectionable matter, but it should be cleaned completely. There should remain no residues while cleaning. Next, it's the third thing of this disinfection. The reduction by means of chemical agents or physical methods of a number of microorganisms in the environment to a level that does not compromise food safety. So it's self-explanatory. That's disinfection. Next. What are the areas which are exempt under good hygiene practices? Primary production. Then its establishment, design and facilities. That can also deteriorate hygiene practices. Control of operation. Operation is going on automatic, but a person comes without gloves, without hand mask, and he spits or coughs. So our activities, all hygiene practices go in vain. establishment maintenance and sanitation. It should be properly maintained and sanitized, and personal hygiene of the employees should also be up to date. Transportation should be adequate, and every person who is involved in the food processing should be trained properly. And finally, product information should be given. आपने देखा होगा जब भी आप कोई पैक चीज लेते हो उसमें सब कुछ लिखा होता है, न्यूट्रिशनल इंफॉर्मेशन, बैच नंबर, मैन्युफैक्चर डेट, कब बना है, storing conditions. Storing conditions are very important because if you do not follow the storing conditions, that's going to deteriorate your food. Next, good hygiene practices deal with safety and suitability requirements to be followed worldwide. So it's not limited to only particular region, but it is to be followed worldwide. Food operations should decide which practices are critical for safety of products, and this have to be included in the system. For example, इसमें थोड़ा elaboration जो चाहिए यहाँ पर. Food operations should decide which practices are critical. What do you mean by this? Packing is also one of the operations. See, if our food is ready, now it's to be packed, and we do not pack it in the food grade packaging material, so it will render our food unsafe or substandard. That's one. Another, anybody who will tell me this about this food operation? What operation we are doing? Do you know about pasteurization? Okay. What is pasteurization? Anybody? Speak up, I'm listening. Pasteurization, it's a familiar process, and everybody among us should know it. Stand up and speak loudly. Pasteurization is a process of killing bacteria, germs, under so many temperature controls for a particular period of time. It's not high. I will excuse me, it's not definitely high. There are set procedures for it. If we heat a food article at above 60 and maintain that for about 30 minutes and then immediately cool it down, it is pasteurization. Another method, heat it for about 72 degrees centigrade for 15 seconds. It will serve. Or 82 degree for 2 seconds. Or UHT above 100 degree for 1 second. It will serve. So there are so many these pasteurization methods. But if we rely completely on machines, particularly in milk plant, what we see, pasteurization machines are installed, pasteurizations are installed, and they display temperature. For them, they have to maintain 72 degree for 15 seconds. Okay, that's what their processing line is. But if it so happens that it is displaying 72 or 73 degrees centigrade, but it is not calibrated, we will see that its temperature is far below 7. It is showing 72, but it's not calibrated properly. Actual temperature is 65. But this display is showing as 72. So, is our pasteurization going on as per the standard or not? No, obviously it's not. So, this operation, the pasteurization operation in this default system, I'll call it as a default system. It will render our operation worthless. It will mislead the this food business operator or the processing company, and ultimately what will happen is that the germs which are supposed to be killed at 72 degrees for 15 minutes will survive this method, and ultimately the food which is reaching to the consumer will be unsafe. So that's why it says food operation should decide which practices are critical. So it becomes a critical practice. We have to monitor, we have to calibrate the temperature of this pasteurization. Next slide, please. There are so many hazards. There are so many hazards associated with food. Food business operators need to present the concept of hazard identification. So what food business operator is, he should be able to identify the hazard, analyze it, what kind of hazard it is, and to make sure that he is aware of the most of the typical hazards associated with that food. So whatever hazards, whatever food he is processing, he should know the tendency of the hazards which are associated with his food, so that he can take the corrective measures and act in a way to minimize or lessen or eliminate those hazards. So when we come to the hazards, there are different kinds of hazards. Can anybody tell me what are, before switching to the next slide? I would like to listen it from you. How many of you are pursuing PG? Can you tell me what are the different hazards? Pardon? Speak loudly. Yeah. Yeah. All are dangerous. All are dangerous. We cannot ignore even the slightest of the hazards. Every hazard is to be treated as a special case, and we have to do enough, adequately enough, I would like to say, to eliminate that hazard, whether it is physical, whether it is chemical, or whether it is biological. Thank you. Sit down. So, before analyzing, I would still have some interaction, like to have some interaction from you. Do you know the difference between the hazard and the risk? See, you got to know these things. You have to know these things. You have to advance in your field. What's the difference between the hazard and the risk? Yes, you are right. Anybody else? Will anybody else among you second her? Okay. Every hazard is associated with the risk. There is no doubt. Every hazard is associated with the risk. But what is the quantum of the risk? What is the quantum of the risk? Is what decides whether hazard is important to us or not. For example, I'll take an example of this grading of rice. While we are checking this rice, some husked rice are with it. Coming up this one, so it is a hazard. It is a hazard. But does this pose risk? It doesn't. It's all, we go to the it is a hazard. The bond with it. Go use all time use it is a hazard, but with the minimum risk. So we can ignore this. So it is wise for a business entrepreneur not to waste time in removing such hazard. It is not worth that. But what if instead of this we have a stone or a piece of glass, a broken glass fragment in it? Yes, that's a risky one. Because what a stone can do, it can damage our teeth, and a glass, if swallowed, it can damage our in digestive system. Anyway, so this is what makes a hazard risky or non-risky. If a hazard does not pose any risk or a minimal of the risks, then we can ignore it. But if the hazard is risky, we cannot ignore it. We have to address this hazard. So food safety hazard, whether it is from the biological, chemical or physical agent in the food or condition of the food. Condition of the food means, see, there are two things. One is, if anything goes into the food, it can contaminate the food. Another thing is, the food has acquired such a nature that in itself becomes a hazard. It in itself becomes a source of contamination. So, the potential cause to adverse health effect. Then, food safety risk, the function of the probability of the adverse effect and the severity of that effect. कितना effect पड़ा और उससे क्या नतीजा निकला. Next slide. So as you know, hazards can be classified into three: the biological, the chemical, and the physical. Some say biological can further be divided into two: macro and micro. But that's a good thing to categorize it further into two. That adds to the value, but broadly it comes into biological. Next slide. What are the sources of the biological